Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Questions and Answers. I'm your host, Amjad Muhammad, and I'll be with you for another 20 minutes or so. We had a number of callers just before the break, and I hear that we've got a caller online who's been very patient during our short interval. Oh, it's been dropped. There goes my, praising the caller. So, dear caller, if it was you who was on hold and you just couldn't wait any longer, then please call back. We're back on air, as you can see, and we're ready to take your question. Whilst we're waiting for the caller to return their call, or any fresh new caller, let's tackle that question the brother asked just before the break, which was that his parents are living abroad. He's living here in the UK. They try as much as they can. Obviously, they've got commitments here to travel to India and to meet them and to show affection and love. And but there doesn't seem to be any reciprocation of that. I'm now going to generalize. This is not what the brother said. So it seems that this relationship is a one-way sort of relationship where there's a lot of love and affection coming, but there seems to be not so much coming from the other side. This is very much an Indian subcontinent thing. I've done some. I've not say it's been absolutely PhD level research or something which can go in an academic journal. It's more anecdotal. It's more gathering evidence from people that I've been speaking to. So it's not really an absolute quantitative analysis, which, as I said, is of academic standard. But you get the same kind of vibe when you talk to people. There's clearly a very difference in the relationship that parents had towards their children in the Indian subcontinent compared to how parents have their relationship with their children in the UK. It's a very different thing altogether. For instance, children are kind of, and I'm generalizing, so I don't want anybody to get upset at this. Children are more like a kind of a possession in the Indian subcontinent. They're very much dependent upon their parents. Therefore, they are very, as they call it, respectful, but listen to everything because they have no other means. They don't have a house. They don't have anything. In the UK, life's very different because children become very independent from their parents early on. Whereas in the Indian subcontinent, children are very dependent on their parents. In fact, they normally take up the work because education has to be paid for, and therefore that's provided by the parents. And usually if they can't afford it, then the child normally works in the same area that his father's working in. So if he's got a particular trade or a particular skill. So anyway, cutting a long story short, children are very dependent upon their parents in the Indian subcontinent. So what happens is there's an expectation from the children, and there's nothing that the parent has to reciprocate because it's a one-way relationship. Because the child is benefit. I'm going to come back to this. We've just got the caller come back. So assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear caller.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am going to ask you a sensitive question, Mufti Sahib. In one town, we have 3 mosques. One is a Waqf mosque, the other 2 are not. So somebody whose 3 generations are living in that town goes to pray Jummah prayer in the Waqf mosque. He has been doing it for the last 45 odd years. Now there is a turmoil going through in the mosque between some people, an imam and other people and this and that. So what's happening is during Jummah time there is big commotion goes through there for the last 3 Jummah. This particular person I'm talking about, has got heart difficulty problem. He has heart bypass done. So there are other people who also has talked to the committee and the imam to sort out the problem.
Sure.
And nobody seems to be taking any sort of, what can I say, notice to address the thing properly, and they are always shouting and doing these things. So this particular person finds it very difficult for him to not just concentrate, but physically he feels sweaty, palpitation, and this sort of thing. So
sure.
He doesn't feel what is the word I'm looking for? Comfortable to go to the other mosque, although there are 2 other mosques in the town he lives.
Okay.
To go and pray Jummah prayer, because in his childhood he was taught that Juma prayer is not actually valid, or not to go and attend Juma prayer in mosque which is not waqf, because it's considered private place.
So may I?
Like some place where they have mortgage and things like this.
Yeah.
Although people pray there, but it's not been declared. Although people know them as a mosque, but they are not really 100% purely. You can say that they are mosque which everybody has their equal rights and this sort of thing.
So just if I just get in there, just for my own clarification, these other two masjids which are non-waqf,
yes.
was when they were built, was there a declaration that this is going to be a Shari masjid?
One is called a Muslim center, and the other one is called the town mosque. And both of them, people pray there. One has been about 20 odd years, one is about 30 odd years. So people pray there 5 times a day as well as Juma. But people who know that how they started and what they are doing and how it's going on, people like them wouldn't go. People like them wouldn't go to pray in those two mosques, because one has got mortgage and the other one is controlled by just one family. It is their personal property. They allow people to pray, but nobody has any say in it. They employ their own imam, and they just open it a few minutes before prayer time and shut it after prayer time. And this is what has been going on for decades.
Sure.
So this particular person, he's concerned about that if he doesn't attend Juma, is he going to be sinful? If he prays home, like during lockdown time, he was praying home, he was advised to pray Zuhr prayer. Or does he have to go to a neighboring town or city to go and pray in a mosque where he knows it's a proper mosque?
Sure.
What would be a good thing to do for this person?
I understand.
This is what he is seeking the advice from you.
I understand.
Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. We have another caller. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
अस्सलाम वरहमतुल्लाहि वबरकातुहू। मुझे सवाल ये कहना था कि मेरी एक जानने वाली थी, उनका इंतकाल हो गया, वो बहुत बीमार थी, तो सब लोगों ने पैसे उनके लिए जमा करके भेजे, लेकिन फिर फाइनली उनका इंतकाल हो गया। तब उनके कुछ पैसे हमारे पास बचे में, तो हमने सब लोगों से पूछा जिन्होंने पैसे दिए थे कि भाई तुम लोगों को पैसे वापस चाहिए, तो सब ये कह रहे कि दीदी हमें नहीं चाहिए, उनके नाम से कुछ कर दो। तो हम लोग सोचे क्या उनके नाम से हम इन पैसों से सबका जारिया कर सकते हैं, जैसे कोई कुआं खुदवा दें या कुछ मदरसे में पैसे दे दें, क्योंकि वो पैसे तो अब हमारे पास अमानत है और जाहिर है कि वो तो उनका तो इस्तेमाल जाहिर है ख़त्म हो चुका है।
जी हाँ।
तो क्लियर करना था कि अगर आप मेहरबानी करके बता दें कि हम कोई सदका जारिया का काम उनके लिए कर सकते हैं, उन्हीं पैसों से कुआं खुदवा दें या कोई मदरसे में दे दें या किसी गरीब को दे दें, क्या बेस्ट यूज़ हो सकता है उस पैसे का, क्योंकि उनके भी, क्योंकि ये उनके और आपके तो पैसे हैं नहीं, ये तो रिश्तेदारों के पैसे हैं। तो हमने सुना था कि सदका जारिया तो मेरी और आपके पैसों से ही होता है, तो ज़रा इस बारे में अगर आप बता दें तो।
ठीक है इंशाल्लाह। ओके जी भाई, सलाम। Okay, so I'm not sure where I am with the questions. And I explained the last question before the break. Yeah, but fathers' relationships, parents' relationships. So unfortunately, that's how it is. The way our, the generations that came from the Indian subcontinent, it might also apply to Turkey and countries in Africa and also other countries in the Middle East. But I have direct experience or large experience with people from the Indian subcontinent. So that's how it is, unfortunately. What can you do? You can try your best. That's all you can do. It may not still be acceptable. You might have to, literally, take blood out of a stone, and that still will not be acceptable. You don't measure your love towards a person by how they reciprocate it back to you. As long as you are respecting them, as long as you feel you're showing them affection, then that will suffice. You cannot, you can only do what you are capable of doing. Okay? So that answers that one. The other question that we got straight after the break was with regards to this gentleman who's in a predicament in that he suffers from a heart condition, and the only one which to him has been a true masjid from the word go, from the beginning, has been this particular masjid. But over the last few weeks, some dispute has arisen, which is causing problems in the masjid, and that means obviously that it's causing a ruckus, a scene, lots of loud noise, lots of shouting, lots of problems, and this brother's feeling very uncomfortable there. He's not just uncomfortable in a spiritual sense, because at the end of the day, a masjid is a place where you go and connect with Allah, connect with your fellow worshippers, and come home. So not only does he feel uncomfortable spiritually, but he also feels uncomfortable physically in terms of his heart condition. There are two alternatives, one which is a Muslim center and one which is a mosque, but it's been founded by a private family. He didn't clarify which one has the mortgage on it, whether it's the Muslim center that has the mortgage on it or the masjid that's privately owned that has the mortgage on it. But I'm going to respond in a general way so that it not only benefits our brother, but it also benefits other people. What you have to do, you see, is that, there was a time when we used to live in a black and white world. What I mean by that is that halal was so clear and haram was so clear. And then there was the bit in the middle. And, you could easily avoid haram if you wanted to, and you could easily get halal if you wanted to. We now live, and I used this phrase before, and I probably used it on Iqra TV as well, is that we now live in a world of grays. Okay? Nothing is perfectly halal, or very rarely you'll come across something which is perfectly halal, and very rarely will you come across something which is absolutely haram. So there's lots of grays, okay? So what we have to do is look at the best scenario in those situations. Anything which obviously has had a mortgage and is paying interest and is giving sood, then obviously we need to avoid that for the very fact that the bunyad of the masjid, the foundation of the masjid is on riba, and it's very contradictory to worship that Rabb, to worship that God, to worship that Allah that has declared war against riba. So it's so contradictory. So that one should avoid, and that would probably go to the bottom of the pile of the three options that the brother had available to him. In terms of a private masjid, there's nothing wrong, even if a masjid is a private masjid. Yes, it should be open to the public. Yes, the public should have access to it. Yes, the public should be able to set up a board which can then give its opinions in terms of how the masjid should be run. But there's nothing wrong it's not perfect, but there's nothing wrong in a family that has bought a piece of land, has built a masjid, which they own the piece of land, and they've not made waqf of it, which they should have done if it's a masjid, and they use it as a masjid. Now, if it was a Shari'i masjid, this is the point I was getting to, then it should be waqf, because a Shari'i masjid you can't own. A Shari'i masjid is transferred from the ownership of a person to ownership of Allah. You can be a custodian over it, you can be a guardian over it, but that land now is owned by Allah. Now, obviously, all land is owned by Allah. But what we do is, through this worldly world that we live in, we transact in things. We can own mal, even though in reality, mal is all Allah's. The gold, the silver, the money in your pocket is all Allah's. But in a worldly sense, we kind of go through that. So if it's not waqf, then, that's something to avoid. The Islamic center, now, again, is that a Shari'i masjid or is that a musalla? If it's a musalla, yani it's a place which is not a Shari'i masjid, which has just been established as a place for prayer, and we have lots of those where, Islamic schools are not masjids, but they're a place for prayer, so the students can pray there, but the 5 daily prayers might not be held there, Fajr might not be held there, weekend prayers might not be held there. Same with the Islamic center, it might just be a musalla, meaning that all the 5 daily prayers are not held there. It might be that the Muslim center, Islamic center, is a masjid, that actually it was declared as a Shari'i masjid. Then the issue is going to come as to whether it was that place that took the money or bought the land via mortgage. So really, when you take all those into consideration, and the brother who's going through this situation is far better placed, all I'm doing is giving him general understanding as to what's an absolute no-no and what's a little bit grey in between, then, he can go to one of the other places, as I said, not knowing where the mortgage is, and pray there. In terms of traveling to another town, I don't know the distance between the town he's living in and the nearest town. Is it a 20-minute drive? Then I guess it's not too much of a big problem. If you live in London, for example, getting to the mosque takes normally 45 minutes anyway, 40 minutes anyway. Even though the masjids are relatively close by because of how long it takes, especially if you're going by car. Much quicker if you go by bike or by walking. So it depends how close the next town is. If it's relatively close, then, why not? It might only be a 15-minute drive there, 15-minute drive back. If the nearest town is like 2-3 hours away, then I guess that's out of the question. So again, he will be better placed to make that kind of decision. However, one should avoid the alternative, which was what the brother finished his conversation on, which was on dhuhr. Should I pray dhuhr at home? That really should be avoided, because where there is a congregation taking place, admittedly in very grey area, then one shouldn't avoid Jummah congregation. It might be that in the main hall, in that masjid where there's trials and tribulations going on, that he doesn't pray in the main hall, but he prays in another hall. So he misses all the ruckus, he misses all the loud voices and whatever, and he's in another room. So he can just kind of go in, pray and go. Or he comes very late, so he can pray and then leave. So he just attends, gets there literally for the khutbah, listens to the khutbah, prays the salah, and then leaves immediately. So he doesn't have to hang about for the trouble. Last question was a sister, and I had a little bit difficulty hearing it. बहन जी ने फ़ोन किया कि उम्मीद है कि उनका सवाल ऐसे था कि मैंने पैसे को जमा किया है और ये पैसे कहाँ मैं इस्तेमाल कर सकता हूँ. यानी ये पैसे जो आपने जमा किया, अगर मैंने सवाल को गलत समझ गया तो माफ़ी मांगता हूँ, लेकिन इसलिए कि आवाज़ में बहुत शोर थी, आवाज़ अच्छी तरह से मेरे कान में नहीं आ रहा था. तो अभी फ़ोन पर भी किसी ने फ़ोन किया. ये है कि जो सदका उन्होंने जमा किया, हाँ, जो कुएँ हैं या बच्चे हैं, कोई यतीम बच्चे हैं, कोई मदरसा है, कोई मस्जिद में है, वहाँ आप इस्तेमाल कर सकता है. और जिसको आपने दिया है उनके लिए सवाब मिल जाएगी. और जैसे आपने कहा, ये सदका जारिया प्रोजेक्ट है, तो जितने देर पर वो यतीम है या ये मदरसा है या ये मस्जिद है या ये कुएँ हो या वगैरह जो चीज़ है, जिस तरह वो बाकी है, इस तरह उनको सवाब मिल जाएगी. माफ़ी मांगता हूँ, 1 सेकंड बाकी है. अस्सलाम वालेकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू.